Hello and welcome to this episode of Timeless Topics. This is part 3 in a 3-part series on how we cultivate hope and honor our shared humanity through those moments of connection, whether they're at a conference, during a class, or in a conversation. In this episode, we discuss everything from community, intentionality, and growth to turning inspiration and connection into action. Stick with us as we share this longer form discussion with an added dose of spice. We're so excited you're back with us for part 3. Let's go ahead and jump right back into the conversation.
I think you're also kind of making me think, though, about those solutions or those strategies to help folks, stay afloat, if you will. There has to be some kind of an intentionality around that too, some kind of like framework or scaffolding that becomes that lifeline or that raft for folks. Because without that, you can feel that you are really alone. I mean, if the system, isn't providing you with some kind of structure, um, it can really feel isolating. And some of those examples that you were giving or those situations you were describing did kind of bring me back to some of my earlier experiences when you are popping off and stuff. And sometimes you're not popping off in a therapeutic way or in a healing way, and that it can actually um, create kind of contaminate the soil of where you are, and then that toxicity can start to take root. So I think kind of being mindful that yes, we definitely flourish when we are supported and loved and connected, respectfully, and all of the good ways with our teammates, um, but to do that all by yourself without any scaffolding can be really challenging, because I'm not just coming to work with, like I just jumped out of, off a unicorn and there were rainbows and everything. And I just jumped in here and I'm just so happy to be here. Like I'm also having my own lived experience outside of the NICU that is also shaping and shading and coloring the me that shows up in any given situation. So if I don't see a life draft available, that kind of can lead me to struggle to always show up as that best self all the time, because kind of coming back to what you were saying, Tracey, before, it's wicked hard to be on all the time. I absolutely can't do it. So I think this has really been a really cool conversation to just kind of call out and hopefully help folks see that there are lots of moving parts and there are responsibilities and realities that are part of the lived experience of human beings who've chosen this particular path, right? I mean, staying true to our passion. Um, and and when we need help, we need to help each other, kind of, one on one, but we also need to work in systems that also honor the sacred work that we're doing and also support the healing and the kind of, sometimes you just need to hang on, to navigate and to help me always show up as the better self. Do you know what I mean?
And recognizing that if you're in that place where that healing, supportive crew is not around you, you need to seek it out,
Yeah.
right? One, maybe that's not the place that you need to be, but going back to that sense of kind of poisoning the soil around you, right? You have to seek it out, or
Yeah.
else you are going to become poisoned. You are going to become bitter. You are going to become that thing that you don't want to become, right? And so again, respecting privacy and HIPAA and all the things that we have to. As Jessi pointed out, we're not on TikTok seeking out, but
Yeah.
seeking out someone who is safe, someone who is going to be that nurturer for you so that you can keep doing it. I think that that is probably, I have no evidence to support this because I'm not that bright and can just quote like Mary can. But I'm sure there has to be something that talks about how that contributes to our burnout
Yeah.
and our turnover that, as we pointed out, has historically not been a NICU problem, but now is becoming a NICU problem, right? Yes, are our patients getting smaller, higher acuity, sicker birthing persons as well as the babies? Yes. But have we been able to encounter that over the years and deal with it? Yes. right?
Yeah.
Because 25 years ago, a baby born at 24 weeks was seen as really sick and high acuity, right? And we dealt with it,
Yeah.
right? And there was just not that same turnover. But I think that we had more of a community to
Yeah.
help build us up so that when it was that awful situation, there was somebody helping hold you up
Yeah.
versus stepping on you and saying, oh, look, now you're down on the ground. My turn to be on top,
Yeah.
right? And again, trampling over each other. So take it back to that area of you got to have that community. You got to have those people around you that are just going to help boost you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think neonatology has risen to the occasion. Like that's kind of our brand. That's what we do, right? We keep making, care decisions that end up with smaller people or more challenging situations and, all these things. And like a lot of neonatologists and nurses in general will tell you like our goal is zero of all the other things, right? We're not going to stop at, oh, well, our ROP rate is 10. That's good. No, we want zero, right? And it's not, it might be theoretical on paper, but like we're going to get as damn close to it as possible, right? And we've always risen to that occasion. So I feel like we just need to remind ourselves that we can do this too, right? We just need to figure out what do we need to rise to meet this hurdle because we've beaten all those other ones. Think of all the children that are on this planet because someone decided not today. We're going to figure this out,
Yeah.
right? And I'm going to learn from you to make sure that the next baby in the same circumstance might not have the same set of situations that you had, right? And so like we didn't stop at good enough. So why would we stop now?
Right.
Like this is just another thing for us to figure out how to overcome. And I believe we can do it. Like it's not going to be easy, right? But I do believe it's possible. We just have to band together to figure out how are we going to do this, including with our multidisciplinary team, with our families, like with community support groups, like with all these different ways that we can support the dyad that started, right? And then the community that dyad is plugged into that then is influencing us. Like together we can do this. We just need to put our minds to it, I think.
You made me think of an earlier episode when we talked about those micro practices that help us, buoy up, when we are feeling overwhelmed, that again, having these kinds of discussions about these real day-to-day challenges that, we face in the NICU and beyond, it's it's important for us to realize that we can, like you said, I mean, human beings, I forget whose quote this is, but have an incredible capacity to adapt to the most challenging situations. And although that can seem really great, I think we all also need to see the backside of that, though, is do I always have to, be on the edge? Do I always have to be, pushed right up against the pane of glass? Or just because I can, how can we help? How can we support everyone collectively doing this? And I think, kind of we talked about a lot of the different ways of respecting and acknowledging everybody's uniqueness, individual strengths and challenges and strategies that we can do individually and collectively to just keep the good work at the front and center of our vision so that we can reap the benefits of that, right? I mean that I mean there's lots of reasons why we do it, but it certainly feels good. It certainly feels good when you see maybe a parent's worried brow maybe relax for a moment, or you see a super sick, tiny little human snuggling and kind of really enfolding on their parent's chest. And so those are the moments I think that at least for me, when I rewind the tape on my practice, those were the things that gave me the joy that helped me, navigate through the difficult moments that are ever present in an intensive care environment.
I think that's one of our strengths that sometimes we don't play up to is how small the world is,
Yep.
right? Like you could go to a conference with somebody and, be connected in the same way that you would in being in the same unit, but they're in another part of the world even,
Right.
And I think instead of playing to that as a strength and the relationships and community that you can build from that, some people will choose to turn it into a competition. And to me, that's like the absolute worst way to handle this, right? Um, and if we played more into our collective strengths and how small this world is, and that you could have three people from totally different places all end up in a similar thread, even without intentionality of that thread, right? To me, that's like a superpower, right? Um, but I think you have to be comfortable in figuring out how to cultivate those relationships. And it's much easier to protect our egos and, stick to our statistical significance and p-value this and blah, 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 without realizing that we are messing in some of the most intimate parts of somebody's life. Um, and that inherently is going to stick to you. It should. If it doesn't, perhaps you should work at Costco. Like, it might not be for you.
Love that you said that. You're right. It is
I
so
did have to
crazy.
I did have to laugh at the last conference though. Like as after Mary was done speaking and my one friend was like, "Oh, I have to meet her." I was like, "Girl, I know her. I'm gonna introduce you, right?" And she was like, "Really?" I was like, "Really, girl? I know her personally, right?" And it's just that sense of again networking, right?
Wow.
When you were talking about the quilts and the squares, I was like, "Ooh, we should ask one of the big conferences to hold almost a contest to say bring a square for
Yeah.
those people who do quilt. So
Yeah.
not I can't even
Not
stitch around
me.
the umbilical lines, right? I make a knot, pull, right? But for those who do, who are that creative and make a quilt,
Wow.
right? And then maybe raffle it off at the end of the conference or something. I was like,
Yeah,
wouldn't
I
that
think that would be really
That
cool.
could be super cool.
I
That
have made two quilts in my life,
be
two, maybe three. They're very hard. My brain does not spatially think that way. But as I was doing all this, I was like, I'm committed now to this metaphor, so we're just doing it. But I was like, I should pick back up quilting and making my little sad quilts because it was fun to like go then and then like to give it to somebody and you'd be like, oh, now you have a little like cozy thing that I somehow made. I still don't know how, but like they were not fancy by any means. I have a friend, Laura, who's like super into it. She like does little competitions and stuff. And I was like,
yeah,
love her, right? But my brain just doesn't work that way.
yeah,
But I just think that would be a cool thing. Like everybody could bring like even just a piece of fabric that
right?
represents who you are, and then somebody could turn it into.
Yeah, I mean, it's just again that connection, right? And if people would just stop and think about that a little bit more and try to encourage that and support those connections, it makes a ton of difference, you know.
when you were sharing the story, you just made me think of that FANNP conference. And I think when we do, kind of, total full circle back, because we started talking about conferences, I think when we do come to the conferences for the most part, we are our better selves, right? We're like, we're fresh, we're energized, we're excited. Maybe we're clicking it up, with that, the folks that we came with, but we reach out and stuff. And I think that sense of calm and energy and excitement and curiosity, because, duh, you're coming to learn, um, really fosters a lot of that connectedness and especially when you're seeing folks like outside of that clinical circle. I mean, when I go to these different conferences and I see folks that I used to work with, or even I know like, oh, now he was a fellow at Brigham and now he's over here or wherever. You kind of have this vision of them, right? That you have this idea of them or perception of them, and then you see them at a conference. You're like, oh, aren't you fun? Oh my heavens, who knew? Kind of a thing. And I think it's a good reminder too to again not get lost in that binary um, space that we tend to default because that's how we get programmed, right? That yes, I can be grouchy Gertie, I can be really happy, and I can also be fun. And that's just three facets, that's just three squares of who, Mary Coughlin is, and it's a reminder. I do, I love that you said that because I was right there at that table when you introduced me to these folks and stuff like that when we were outside, and it was fun, just seeing that energy around learning and being together and sharing that experience.
It's really
Yes.
sad because when you think about it, the conference attendance numbers seem to be going down.
Yes.
And I get it. Life is hard, right? It's very difficult, and you think about the cost of travel, and you
Mhm.
think about the fact that we are all understaffed. So even if I had the money to get the airfare and to pay the hotel and to pay the conference registration, can I take off for 4 days to be able to go to this conference? Or does that mean that the babies are taking care of themselves and the oldest one is taking care of everybody in the
Yeah.
unit?
Right.
Right? Like,
Right.
and that's not gonna fly with Jaco for sure. So what do we do, right? How do we continue to foster that sense of whatever, you know, because I was talking with someone just about even belonging to a professional organization. Still not the same, right? But just that sense of, again, community,
Mhm.
networking. These are people who have similar thoughts to me, at least in regards to neonatology, right?
Mhm.
And to be able to belong to something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it made me think. I was talking to some of the FCC task force people, and they were like, "Oh, what conferences are you going to?" Because we have to go like get dinner and all the things. Even though we talk all the time, we email, we're on meetings, we're texting, all the things. But like, there's just something different in that in person. I'm getting to know you as a person, and not just you as an educator, or you as a NICU parent, or you as an advocate. Like the you who is you, right? In the end, and it's a big part of the benefit of those things. Like I can think of people that I probably will never see them outside of a conference, but I still think of them as a friend, like of a type of acquaintance, right? And you're like, oh, I get to go to Nan and I get to see Lisa and I get to do this. And like these like in real life friends, right? That stem from other things. But without that shared experience, we probably would have never crossed circles or paths at all. And I think that's one of the big strengths that help play into the building of community. But like you said, you have to be able to access it, whether it's affordability or staffing on the unit. And I think a lot of places are thinking, well, if we just offer it virtual, then they can do it around whatever. But you
Oh,
miss some of it. Some of the knowledge transfer happens, but you miss all the other stuff, you
right.
know?
Yeah. And I think it's that other stuff that really helps cement a lot of the knowledge in there too, because you're having other conversations sometimes, about what this lecturer just said. And do you believe that? And blah, 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 blah. And again, it just really, I think it fans the flames of all your whole cortex, right? It's just like lighting up like a Christmas tree versus sitting in front of a Zoom camera and just kind of, watching it, very like a voyeur. You used that word earlier. Versus being a real participant. And I know folks try, they try to engage in virtual situations, but I think nothing beats the in person.
I keep thinking this one particular moment. I hope it's okay if I say this. At Graven's this year, when Mary and I were sitting there and we were talking, and it's a great presentation, but there's like one slight misstep in a word, and Mary was like, "Should I go up and say something?" And I was like, "Mary, I will always tell you yes. I will always tell you to get up and go say something."
Yeah.
And she was like, "Okay, I'm going to do it." But like thinking like virtually, you would have had that conversation with yourself and
Yeah.
maybe said something in the chat or maybe said nothing. You probably would have just walked off thinking,
Yeah.
oh, there was an opportunity that I didn't take, and maybe even felt bad about yourself for it,
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
I was able to like hype girl you in to like go into the mic, right? And
Uh,
then afterwards, how many people came up and were like, "Thank you for saying that,"
I know that
you
it's
know?
pretty cool. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
But like without that like person standing next to you being like, "I'm down, let's do it," kind of thing, it's hard. And that
Yeah,
can't happen in the same way
it
as
can.
it can, in person versus virtual or all the other things.
Yeah, you got ticket. Yeah.
Right, you remember, gosh, so many years ago now, because I say this all the time, I'm so old. Been doing this for a minute, but I remember that that was one of the things that was a big hype aspect of here's this big national conference, right? Whichever one, not interested in any one particular, but whichever one you choose to go to. But that aspect, I remember in my first year of practice having a really, really, really bad situation. And my attending physician was one of the colleagues, and he's like, you guys are going to this conference together, right? And she's like, yes. He was like, so your goal at this conference is to get her out there, have fun, learn, forget everything that has happened here, come back with this renewed sense. He was like, you are responsible for making sure that she doesn't quit after that experience that happened, right?
Mhm.
And that was what she did. And that was my first kind of endeavor into attending a conference as an NNP. I no, I didn't go to any as a nurse because I had no money. But as an NNP, or this was my first endeavor, right? And so now I see these newer NNPs coming in at the conferences, and I was like, look, this is how we do the conference, okay? So this is what we do on this day, and then this is what we do in the evening, right? And it's like, do you have somebody to eat dinner with? Okay, you don't. We're all going out to dinner together. Hey guys, here's my new friend. We're all going out together, right? And and again, I am so not that person to invite others into my circle, but at the conference, I am a different person, right? And it
Would
is
attest to
all
that,
about
Trace.
you,
Yeah.
right? It's like you leave nobody behind, right? You leave no one behind. We are all in this together. I don't know you, but you look lonely. You want to come over to our table? We got a seat. Scoot over, right? I don't know who this person is, but she was over there lonely. So introduce yourself,
Yeah.
right? We did. I thought it was kind of fun. I hope everybody else around me did too. Where we're all sitting around, and some people knew each other, other people didn't. And then I was like, oh, I'm the common denominator here. So let's all talk about how we know Tracey. How did we meet Tracey? Right? And they were like, seriously? I was like, yep, let's do it. Right. And so it's just those things that you do, and you're like, it just again sent me a renewed sense of I'm gonna go back into it, and I've now got this knowledge, but I also have fun, but I've got this knowledge. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's make an impact.
We were going to meet up for lunch or dinner or something, and we were just texting back and forth, and I thought there would be a line. There was no line. So I was sitting at a booth all by myself. Trey shows up, brings another gal, then a few more folks, kind of walk by, calls them all in. It was like, this is so much fun. Oh, and we get
Yeah,
to talk
because
about the stuff, it's just
Okay.
wonderful.
But they didn't want to talk to me. They wanted to meet Mary, right? They all wanted to meet Mary, and they were like, hey, oh, so you're Mary?" I was like, "Yep, yep."
yeah, it's one of my favorite things to go with somebody. I was like, oh, and this is Mary Coughlin. They're Mary Coughlin. And you're
Yes.
like, yeah, I mean, she's just a regular person, but sure, you can meet her. And but I think it's also like this profound um cup filling, if you will, right? Of like, here is this person who I've heard speak on a podcast, I've seen at a conference, I've read an article, I've done something. Like I know of this person like in the ether, whose work I might have aligned with and been like, wow, this is great. I really like this, right? And then here I am to like see her, eat some chicken, and you're like, oh well, this is kind of wild, but also incredibly normal, in a sense of like everybody needs community and everybody benefits from all these social interactions. And it aligns with who we are professionally, which then makes it more meaningful, like from an adult learning theory, right? When things are meaningful to adults, they tend to keep them.
Yeah.
Versus I can read the same CBL about strokes in grown-ups and walk away with the same 3 points for most of my career, right? If they want me to learn something else, I got to really spice it up because I'm really like, I don't know much else outside of the fast, right? But it is this connection of, self as like who I am as a person to self who I am professionally, so that when I can blend those two worlds, I make more meaningful connections and then more likely to take what I learned from this conference and implement it into the local setting that I practice in to benefit my patients.
Right.
So it's really kind of this big like ripple effect, butterfly effect kind of thing, right? Which starts as, oh my God, I get to meet Mary Coughlin, and ends up with, maybe we should look at updating the language on this parent handout. Or maybe we should looking at this policy that we have about parents not being at the bedside. I just wonder if there's another way we could maybe do that, right? And when you connect those two things, it makes you realize that everything we do has a weight to it, even if we're not being, professional speaker Mary Coughlin or Jessi Barnes that day. We're using your name a lot, and I know that makes you uncomfortable. So we love you a lot, Mary. But like it is kind of stepping into that and using it for like leveraging it for better benefit of everybody.
Yeah.
No, I think it all ties back in, right, to the sense of humanity. right? Like that we're all humans. So yes, we may see this name, we may know this person as the guru of whatever. I won't call your name, Mary, but the guru, right? And so, but then to sit and talk to them, I think it also takes us back to the conversation of building each other up, because as we're sitting there and we're having the conversation, maybe something sparks inside of me, and I say, you know what? Here's an interesting thought, and then we'll take the pressure off of Mary and Jessi. You say, it's a great thought. I think you should write about it. I think you should present it next year, right? Like there's nothing that says that you can't be there too. So instead of standing on top of each other, we're again grabbing our sis by the hand and saying, come on, sister, you got this. I got you. How can I help you? Right? There's strengths inside of all of us. And maybe you're not that person to say, I want to present, I want to publish, but maybe you're that person that I say, hey, what do you think about being on the conference planning committee next year? Right? Bring your strengths of that component. What do you think about helping build the quilt? Right? Like bring that, because you're that creative person. My brain can't go there. So it's how we continue to build our community up. And so, two, sustainability, because none of us are going to be here forever. And so who's going to come behind us and do this work to ensure that this profession of neonatal nursing, this wonderful thing of caring for these babies and their families, doesn't fall by the wayside? So who's going to do that? So we have to encourage, call them the babies, the baby NNPs and the baby nurses, and those to do these things and to come to these conferences and to belong to these organizations and to network with the people that you read about, that you see on the podcast, on TikTok, God's sake, right? Or somewhere, right? That you're seeing somewhere and say, I think I might want to be you one day. Bet, let me show you how to get there, right? And let's walk this path together. Because at some point, I need to hand the reins over to somebody.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Timeless Topics. We welcome your feedback and suggestions, so please reach out. Our handle on all social media platforms is @TimelessTopicsNICU, and our email address is timelesstopicsnicu@gmail.com. See you next time.